Here we are, folks. June 3rd, 2020. Jazz Video Guy Live. Fred Premack, aka Jazz Video Guy. My special guest today is a percussion powerhouse. His name is Ralph Peterson. And those of you who don't know about Ralph, you're going to find out a lot about him today. Those of us in the jazz community know Ralph for many years, his work as a musician, as an educator. Talk to Ralph.
Ralph Peterson is probably one of the most he's clearly one of Art Blakey's #1 sons. Up in the morning exploding, you know, from a musical sense. I remember seeing him years and years ago when I was living in the Twin Cities at the Walker Art Center. And I've always been impressed by Ralph Peterson. He's also a fine music educator as well.
When I joined the group OTB in 1986, and Kenny Garrett had left the band to join Art Blakey, and I was about to move to New York from Virginia, and I joined the band, and Ralph was the drummer, and that was one of the most important musical events and musical relationships that and I really learned how to hear he heard everything all of the time. I should say he hears, as in present tense. He hears everything all of the time. He hears where it's going. He hears it like a score, as if you were listening to a symphony. He could hear every part all the time. And he's a great composer. Of course, he plays great trumpet, great piano. So I really have learned a lot from playing with Ralph, and of course we have a deep friendship also. So he's just an incredible, gifted musician.
want to thank
Wow.
our friends at Drummer World. Hello, Ralph.
Hello, Brett. What's happening, man? It's good to see you.
your
Good
face
to
in
be
the
with you.
place.
Thank you for having me.
Ralph Peterson is a drummer, an educator, a father, a concerned citizen, a karate guy, and a survivor. So let's go back a little bit. And Ralph, how did you get started with music? Why the drums and why jazz?
Well, my father was a drummer, and he played with cats like Red Prysock and Sonny Stitt, and in Atlantic City at the Brown Derby, Kentucky and Arctic Avenue. His mentor was Chris Colombo, who was the father of Sonny Payne. And Sonny Payne, of course, the mainstay in the Basie Band, had to gig with the Basie Band when I was 12 years old. I often share on my Facebook page a picture of me and Sonny Payne, with Sonny giving me a drum lesson on the cruise ship. My parents had gone on vacation. So music was always around my family. My uncle and my grandfather played cymbals in the church. My mother and grandmother had beautiful singing voices. And I have my grandfather's cymbals, you know. One day soon they're going to make it onto a recording. It was pretty much the first game changer experience was seeing the Basie Band at 12 years old. Where I ran intermediate hurdles and the quarter mile in high school and played quite a bit of basketball. But always buried it like a splinter in my spirit was this need to play music. So I would play basketball for 2 years and then take a year off, run track a year and then take a year off. I used to make my coaches crazy because I would always go back to music. It was my sanctuary. And in high school, I studied music theory under my second mother, Dr. Ola H. Gathers. And love to her. She's in Virginia now. She had me and a whole bunch of primarily African American choir students singing the entire Christmas section of Handel's Messiah, recitatives, solos, and all the choral pieces from memory in high school, you know. And so I did come from a musical background. I'm grateful for that.
What was your first professional gig?
Ha! Well, it probably was with a band called Black Spirit, a garage funk band. I was in several of them in Pleasantville and Atlantic City, Pleasantville, New Jersey, where I grew up. Pleasantville, Atlantic City, and Ventnor are responsible for myself, Harvey Mason, and Peter Erskine, respectively. So, you know, there's quite some serious drum energy comes from Atlantic County, New Jersey, you know. But there was Black Spirit, and then there was another group called Cosmic Nirvana. And I played baritone saxophone in that band. The uncle of drummer John Lampkin was the trombone player in that band, my good brother Martin Lampkin. And so I'm not a jazz baby, you know. I came to
the other musicians who've helped you in your journey.
Well, between Dr. Gathers in high school, Rob Reimer, Bill Woods, Jack Melton, they all played a part in my development. Dr. Gathers being the most influential because she was the head of the music program. They all answered to her, and so a lot of my teaching style in big band is mirrors Dr. Gathers' approach. And I told him about Doc Gathers in the Gen X big band. But then the next pivotal chapter is when I got to Rutgers and met Paul Jeffrey and Michael Carver. And also on the faculty were Kenny Barron, Larry Ridley, Ted Dunbar. And so you really couldn't go wrong. And recently, like the immediate graduates were, immediate alumni was Tom Chapin, the late great Tom Chapin, and then Jerry Weldon, Adam Brenner, Josh Harris, Andrew Beal, Dave Schumacher, Terrence Blanchard, Regina Bell. I mean, it was crazy the amount of talent that was at Rutgers in the period that I was there. Harry Pickens, Steve Nelson, James Spaulding, Livingston College. And then, amazingly enough, right up the road at William Patterson was Barry Danielian, Carl Allen, and Brian Carradine School. South of New Jersey at what was then Glassboro State College, Dennis de Blasio was a student. Great energy in New Jersey jazz. And as far as Rutgers, Paul was the engine. Paul was the engine, you know, and last but not least, my trumpet teacher, William Butler Fielder, affectionately known to all as Prof, from whom I coined the phrase onward and upward. He used to tell us onward and upward, not backwards and downwards, you know. So those guys are really important people in my life, and they exposed me to the music. A piano player named Alan Watson, you know, a bass player who's, you know, my foxhole friend to this day, Hank Scalco, who was smart enough to study computer programming and wrote a software that was picked up by IBM. You know, he's better off than all of us, but he still decided to be my friend. So I'm grateful for all them cats. And he can still play the bass too. Yeah. Frank Lacey was there as a student. The Harper brothers came through New Brunswick during that period. So it was a hell of a time. I was exposed to a lot of great musicians right away. So I eat dealing for me to be half-stepping, you know? And I was rudiments. And so Michael Carvin failed me in the percussion audition, right? And said that you can't study with me, just like you can't go to English department and say you want to be a writer and you don't understand the letters of and the function of the alphabet of English. Well, there's 26 letters of the alphabet and there's 26 basic rudiments. Go learn the alphabet for the language of drumming and don't come back over here asking me what I could teach you until you learn that. Kind of speaks to kind of some of the things I've survived, been fortunate enough to survive and overcome in my life. And it's on a record called Dream Deferred. You have the choice, which is a thing that we have here in America. It's the nature of art. It's why I kind of so more black in pretty much everywhere except jails and prisons. Talk about how much you love the music, but on the other side of your neck, talk about you don't want to hear the story or the plight or the emotional experiences that give rise to these expressions through music. Stayed active, and I'm very closely watching. My heart is broken. Condolences to Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and all of the other African Americans who have died at the hands of the police. And it was encouraging today to hear that all of the co-conspirators in the murder of George Floyd have been charged and that the charges have been upgraded. And William McGreevey is the governor of New Jersey, and Amiri Baraka, who the great author, my second record, was poet laureate of the state of New Jersey. And the controversial piece in following the terrorist attack at 9/11, he asked some uncomfortable, but the nature of art is not always to make you feel good. The nature of, like my drumming, a lot of people refer to my drumming, but you know, we have a long history of people in this country of folk being uncomfortable with the sound of the drum. That's that exists in all kinds of critique and assessments and of music in general. But you can't point to any major change in music without seeing a major change in the role and function of the drums. So, you know, none of that, it's all connected. It's all connected. You know, I love this country. I'm an American. It gives me the right to call it on its crap. Each of us have positions of influence that we would only be stupid to give them up, because some of us now sit in the position to affect change on the minds of other young, you know. Anything that's not a nail, you don't know what to do with. It's metaphoric, but maybe you understand what I'm saying. So the music is important. Art Blakey used to say the music wash away the dust of, you know. We were talking earlier about one of the dragons that both you and I have faced, and I kind of held off on sharing this with you directly because I only wanted to share it once, because one of the things I do in facing down this cancer dragon is I limit the amount of time that I talk about it. I limit the amount of space it gets to rent in my life in a day. You understand what I'm saying? And so I got my radiation scans back, and the news is not as great as I'd like it to have been. The treatment was successful in significantly slowing the growth of the progression of the disease in me, but it hasn't stopped it and it hasn't reversed it. But we're not out of bullets, you know. I'm not out of the woods yet, and I still got my axe, and I'm still looking for a chainsaw. So I am of good spirit, and I thank you for having this event, because it helped. Life is not living forever. Elvin Jones, Tony Williams, and then some lesser known names like Eddie Gladden and Eddie Crawford and Red Walcott. And these are cats primarily from the Jersey scene. Red Walcott was the drummer with Tiny Grimes, and on Sunny Side of the Street on that record date. So I'm indebted to a lot of people. A great tenor saxophone player from Newark, New Jersey named Leo Johnson. Okay, the Phipps family, who, you know, anybody Wayne Shorter and Woody Shaw, but the first family of jazz in New Jersey is in Essex and Sussex County was the Phipps family. Gene Phipps Sr., Gene Jr., Billy Phipps, and also my dear, dear friend, heavenly shout out to my man Dave Eubanks, because he was 26 when he passed away, and kind of one of the most talented bass players on the set. He was working with Dexter, but he would also come and do gigs at all of the little organ circuit joints in New Jersey, like LC's and Mr. West's Peppermint Lounge and Sparky J's and all of these clubs. And those were the clubs that I cut my teeth in musically and learned how to play. You know, and then Walter Davis came to Rutgers, and not long after that, he gave me my first gig in New York, which kind of set up me meeting Art Blakey.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Art Blakey. He's certainly a major figure in your life. You played with him, you knew him, and you're carrying on the blues, working with him as well, Ralph.
Well, I first met Art through Terrence, through my friendship and association with trumpeter Terrence Blanchard. We went to see him and the band all around, and listen as closely as I could, from as close up as I could. And eventually Art came off the bandstand at the Jazz Forum on West Broadway and tapped me on the shoulder on his way to the dressing room, let me know he had, you know, kind of seen me file. He had recognized. It was an acknowledgement of my presence. Not long after that, I did a few gigs with Walter Davis that had Whitney and Branford Marsalis and the great bass player Phil Bowler on it. And Wynton reintroduced me to Art a little bit. You ought to let him sit in. And that night, I think Tane, Smitty, and Cindy Blackman had already sat in. If not that night, that weekend, because I was going every night to the gig at McHale. And so he asked me if I wanted to play, and I'm like, sure, I want to sit in. You know, my mouth was going one way, but my head was going inside. My head was going, no. But he told me to come back next day at 2:00 to rehearsal. Came back to rehearsal, as was the case. See, in the there's a documentary about the Jazz Messengers where they're having to put his thing on it, you know. But he didn't come and put his thing on it the day I rehearsed. He just asked if I was on time. That was the thing he asked, because I was already in my suit and tie. It was August. I had a wool suit on because I only had one suit. So I was greasier than a Florida pork chop, boy. It was so hot in August in New York, 97th Street. And Charnette Moffett sat in the first time at the same time with me at McCarroll's. And that's when he started talking about the big band and getting all the cast together again. Freddie Hubbard and Wayne Shorter, Chuck Mangione and Lee Morgan and Hank Mobley. We're going to get everything. I was like, okay, wait a minute, boo. He started naming cast that are on the other side. But true to his word, in March of 1983, I was chosen to play in the Art Blakey two-drummer big band at Berklee College of Music. If I swing this, let's see. I don't know if this is going to work. There it is. See that poster? That's the poster from the concert of my first gig as a messenger. And so that's how the relationship began. And playing with him was like earning a graduate school full scholarship with a stipend, because I was getting paid to learn from and play with the master. It was an amazing, it's surreal experience. It happened at the Berklee College of Music Performance Center, Berklee Performance Center, and I still get the willies when I go into that venue. And I've been at the college as an educator now 19 years. So.
Yeah. Well, let's look at a video here about a project coming up, and we'll talk about how you're carrying the messenger tradition on.
Absolutely.
Montunos do that.
This new project.
Onward and Upward is the audacious attempt to write a new page in the Jazz Messenger songbook. The success of the Messenger legacy made it clear that people still love and to a certain extent, spiritually and emotionally, need that sound. And so after doing the live record and playing all of the old war horses and some of the lesser known tunes like Children of the Night and Free for All and The Core, the Legacy Alive record did really well. And so the next natural step is, what would Art Blakey expect of me? And that is to record some original music. So the attempt of the record is twofold: to create as large of a conclave of Jazz Messenger alumni and as possible. And ironically, we ended up with 17 musicians, which has a historical reference to the origins of the Jazz Messengers, because Art Blakey and the 17 Messengers is how this whole thing started. So with the help of NEA Jazz Master Joanne Burkeen, Kevin Eubanks, Robin Eubanks, Steve Davis, Craig Handy, Bill Pierce, Jean Toussaint, Philip Harper, Brian Lynch, Essiet, Lonnie Plaxico, Melissa Slocum, Peter Washington, and Donald Brown, as well as the legacy message. Those are the Messenger alumni. And so we've labeled 3 of the cats legacy messengers, who are people who certainly represent the group and generation of musicians who have come on. The great piano player Zakai Curtis, Anthony Wanzi, and percussionist Reynaldo de Jesus. And so this is my direct homage to the jazz. I think I don't want to come off as claiming exclusivity on carrying forth the legacy of Art Blakey, because every jazz man, this is what makes Art Blakey arguably one of the most important band leaders in American music, period, full stop, is because his band has produced more leaders than arguably any other band in the music. And so, you know, the way that Terrence does it, the way that Donald, Robin in his own band, Kevin in his own way, expression of gratitude to the Messenger Big Band, which the opportunity that made me a messenger. And I got to tell you, Brett, I got some really big news coming in the next 2 weeks. I just publicist and manager in the business, Lydia Liebman and Laura Martinez. I can't give it up yet. I'm about to burst into flames, but you'll know it. I'll send it to you directly. Some really good news. And then through my label, Onyx Productions, I'm now transitioning into creating a platform for young musicians to play. I moved from being a guy who put out my own music to being a record label when I recorded the great songstress Laney Cook, and Music is the Magic CD with Myron Walden and Tabari Lake and Lucas Curtis and Ted Firth, the piano player. And it was a really fun record to do. But I'm really excited to announce that Onyx Productions has signed its next artist, young trumpet player from New Jersey, who was a student of mine at Berkeley. And you're going to hear good things about this guy. His name is Alonzo Demetrius. And his
Alonzo
record,
Demetrius.
Alonzo Demetrius. And his CD is coming out in October. It's called Live from Prison Nation. So he's on the edge. He's talking about and expressing, you know, the thoughts and feelings and reactions of his generation. And I'm really excited to be able to present him as an artist. Yeah. So we all have our ways to honor Art Blakey.
Yeah. Well, one thing we were talking about before was that the Jazz Messengers were like a university. And there's been a tradition in this music of passing it on to younger musicians. And when you got with Art Blakey or Horace Silver or Cannonball, those bands that toured all the time back then, you got an education from the older cats. Now you are in that role as an educator. You've been at Berklee a long time. Jimmy Heath once said to me, teaching is learning.
Absolutely. It's been the greatest gift for me keeping my own sword sharp is to become a teacher. And while I learned that in the classroom, teaching this music, it really became clear to me when I became a black belt in taekwondo. Students will call you on your BS if you come in raggedy, if you come in weak, if you're not in shape. Your students will test you and call you on it. So it forces you to. And I should never be competing for the same gigs, and if we are, then it's his fault. So if I'm competing for the same gigs as my students, you're not supposed to throw water on the students for wanting it and being that hungry. You need to check yourself for being that lazy. And if you're not continuing to keep your sword sharp, then you'll get overtaken by your. I got a roster of soldiers that have come through me that are drummers and non-drummers alike that I'm so very proud of, and sharing what I got from Buhana and Elvin and Walter Davis and Paul Jeffrey and Michael Carvin and Kenny Barron and all those cats, passing that on based on and through my own experiences to the generations behind me is actually my path to immortality. So we take that line of thinking all the way back to the cancer battle. Again, it ain't about being here forever. It's about what you do while you're here that matters,
Well, you are a guy that's done something while you're here, and it does matter. The legacy of your music lives in your students and the people who listen to your music all over the world. A couple of questions here before we jump off, because we kind of burned through the hour here, and I want to play a little more music. People who don't know your music can get a better sense of it. First of all, which of your recordings should people check out?
I would say certainly check out Messenger Legacy Alive. Definitely check out the Duality Perspective, because that gives you two sides, two facets of me as a leader and as a composer at the same time. Definitely check out The Art of War CD. That CD is coming up on a 20-year anniversary. So look out for a reunion there with Jeremy Pelt, Jimmy Green, Orrin Evans, and Eric Rivas. Definitely check out Triangular, the record with me and the late, great Jerry Allen. And my first record, V, which you can see, over this shoulder, there's a gold record for. That gold record is for V, which is the Swing Journal Gold Disc Award. And the first tune on my first record as a leader, the title was The Enemy Within. So it spoke to a lot of things personally, my struggle and subsequent day at a time victory over substance abuse. I've been drinking drug-free 24 years and counting now. And it also speaks to the enemy within. We talk about the oath to the Constitution and protecting the world against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's the enemy within.
Yeah. Well, It's been incredible having you here, man. I just wanted to say something else, and that's that we were talking before. We share something else, and that's we both have incredible daughters. You shared with me some stuff about your daughter. Tell us about your daughter and what she's doing.
My daughter, Sonora Tia, T-I-Y-E, Queen Tia. Sonora meaning sound, Tia meaning queen. Is one of the greatest classical flautists in the world today. She graduated from Curtis Institute after receiving 9 full ride scholarship offers. She now teaches at Curtis Institute, and from the moment of her graduation has been the principal flautist in the Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra. She has 2 recordings out under her own name, classical flute recordings, and there is no way I could be a more proud papa, you know. And her mother, Melissa Slocum, who played at least 3 gigs, if not 2 weeks with Art Blakey in New York, right before Essiet, is also on the new record, Onward and Upward. So it's a family thing. Thanks
a million, Ralph. We're going to go out with something called Emmanuel the Redeemer.
Okay.
What is that?
That's a Mark Whitfield tune that was recorded on the Aggregate Prime CD, Dream Deferred. Thanks, everybody.